I am just making some last second audio checks here, making sure that everything is working as intended. I switched my headset back over to my good headset, so my volume should be better now. Um, so let me know how the audio sounds before we actually get started here, just to make sure everything is good and make sure I'm not talking to myself for the entire seminar. I'm also going to listen to it. It sounds good on my end, so just let me know how it is. And then we're going to give just a couple minutes for everyone to spill in here that plans on showing up, and then we'll actually start the seminar. So with that being said, I'm just going to, once again, wait for everyone to spill in, and then we'll start here. View this as present. All right. Okay, let's then give it a couple minutes for everyone to spill in, and then we'll officially start here. All right, so I feel like I gave like a minute or two, and it's already a little bit over as well in the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and start. So before starting, I just want to go a little bit about how my seminars work and a little bit of other promotional information, and then I'm going to start the seminar. So the first thing is, in terms of Twitch chat, for those who are actually actively participating in the seminar this time, this seminar will be uploaded on YouTube, so by all means, if you have to go in the middle or whatever, you can check out my YouTube channel, it'll be there. Also, in terms of Twitch chat, please keep your questions until there will be a slide that will say ask questions now. Then you can feel free to ask questions. Dropping any kind of comments is totally fine. Just avoid any kind of trolly stuff. Any trolly stuff will be smited by my fantastic moderator or myself. Don't want anything too distracting for me or people that are actually watching it. So no copy pasta stuff or spam emotes or anything like that. Now, in terms of how my seminars work, my seminars last anywhere typically between 20 minutes to an hour depending on the topic. I'm guessing this one will take around 40 minutes. There's a fair amount of slides to go over with a lot of discussion, and then there'll be questions at the end where the seminar is technically over, but any questions on the seminar will be there, and then I'll have another segment where people can ask off-topic questions, and then I'll close out the entire seminar from there and end the stream. Now, in terms of promotions, one thing is I have a Discord that I have been growing with people that are just interested in improving at the game. So if you have Discord and you're interested in joining a Discord community with my students, myself, and some other people, after the seminar, I'll have an option where I'll give you guys my Discord name, and then you can just PM me, and I'll get you added into the Discord. And now the final thing is if you're interested in getting free coaching. For every time I host a seminar, I have a form listed on Law Coaching where you signed up for the seminar and got the information for the seminar there, where you can fill out a form, and then if you fill out that form, you'll be listed in a group of people that will be drawn to get free coaching at the end of the month. I'm doing 2 hours for 2 people each month, so check that out if you haven't done that yet. Now, with that being said, I coach all roles. Sorry. Okay. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start the seminar. So this seminar is on objective control. Extremely important seminar about how to control the pace of the game based on using objectives. Objectives can be seen as plenty of things, such as turrets, dragons, barons, even buffs, jungle camps, even champions sometimes may be considered as an objective, which we'll all get into starting now. So, what does objective control consist of? A couple things: communication, pressure, presence, and vision, which we'll break down right now. So first thing, communication is always like the first step to understanding how objective control starts, because objective control can rarely be controlled by really one person, or it shouldn't be. Sometimes you can get away with controlling it with one person, like if you're playing support and getting vision control of an objective, you're establishing vision, which is part of the control of an objective. But doing that alone can be very dangerous, as I'm sure as a support player, if one of you guys are a support player out there, you'll know how that feels to just get caught while you're trying to establish vision for your team. So communication is always important to discuss with your team, hey guys, let's get control of Baron, or or bottom lane, or let's get control of the dragon. And communicating that is extremely important so your team's on the same page. Now, another example is pressure. And pressure is really important in objective control as well. Pressure can mean a lot of things. As an example, if you have someone split pushing, it's creating objective control pressure. Like if you have a strong top laner like a Jax who's really fed, split pushing and pressuring the lane, that gives you objective control because that forces the enemy team to react to that champion, which may involve having more than one person to go there, or really like the strongest person on the team to go there to deal with Jax, and that may in turn give you control of an objective, like you can do Baron because 2 people go to deal with Jax, and so on. Presence, another thing. Just being around an objective is kind of goes hand in hand with pressure because it creates pressure for the enemy team. Like if you know the enemy team is at Baron, like you feel like pressured, and it's just like, are they doing it? We don't know. Do we have vision? No. Like they could be doing it, and vision is triggering me because it's spelled wrong. That's terrible. All right, let's pretend vision's not not spelled correctly here because that is terrible. All right, moving on. Okay, so why is objective control important? First thing, it secures the objective, like in the sense that it is safe to take an objective when it's secured, which means you have vision control. You have having objective control over an objective is secure. It's less of a risk. No infamous Dignitas throws at Baron or anything like that, where if you haven't correctly secured objective control, it can be very dangerous to take an objective or very risky. And then moving on, with objective control and you getting objectives over and over again, it could snowball victory pretty easily. Also, taking objectives in certain cases is a very safe way of scaling into the game. As an example, elemental dragons is really important. So, securing elemental dragons early on into the game could generally be a very safe way of scaling into the game. Because getting 4 elemental dragons and then scaling to elder dragon would pretty much secure a win, because it's how much elemental dragon matters in the game. So moving forward here. Okay, now the next thing is how to control an objective. These are very very important questions. When, why, and how. So when should you control an objective? And then why, and then how do you do it? So the first thing is when. Win really matters on team compositions and understanding your own team's win conditions to fully identify when an objective is worth a take. So as an example, let's just use, let's say that Infernal Dragon, the strongest and most important early game objective there could be, Infernal Dragon for most cases. Like sometimes First Blood turret's a bit better, but let's just lay it out like this. So when should you take it? Typically when it's safe. So why is it safe? Well, it's safe because the jungler ganked bottom lane's dead. Got a double kill, your bottom lane's healthy, the jungler's healthy, and mid lane can control mid lane so they can't rotate and deal with that. They can't really stop you from taking it. And then how? As I mentioned before, communication, pressure, vision, and presence. So communication, like your jungler communicates, hey, or if you're the jungler, hey, I'm going to gank bottom, we're going to kill them, and then we're going to do dragon. Now that your team knows the plan, you're going to execute it. If it works, great. Pressure. Your mid lane could be pressuring the enemy mid lane so they can't rotate, or making sure that they maybe your mid lane can rotate to pressure the enemy jungler and the enemy mid laner off by just zoning them and threatening. The idea of the other 3 people coming just creates a lot of risk with them even trying to have presence near the objective. Vision, of course, is important. Having a pink ward or something like that can make your team feel safer while you're doing it. And then presence of everyone being there, of course. All right. So I'm gonna go a bit more in depth in terms of the general ideas of covering the basics. So let's get into it. First thing, communication. Communication, I cannot stress how important it is with objective controls. One of the biggest things I've noticed while coaching over the years is that people don't communicate with each other, and it's just because they let bad experiences ruin the idea of communicating with teammates. Because you'll occasionally get the guy where you're like, hey, let's gank top, or hey, let's take Baron, and then you got some guy that's either doesn't listen or says, you're not my real dad, don't tell me what to do, I'm just going to split push because I want gold, or whatever. And sometimes it's not going to work, but in general, it's just proven from someone, just coming from me, who I've been teaching this game for years, I've been playing this game for years, 6 years, that communication does matter, and it does help. It's worth the risk of getting flamed or just ignored to do it. It really does. So as an example, let's get vision control of Baron. Come and help me get vision control of Baron. That's, once again, really important because something that happens all the time is players go to solo get vision on Baron and get caught or get picked. When an entire team walks in together, it's less likely that that's going to happen. So now pressuring, to go in as an example, splitting bot with TP or having people split pushing is a really good example of creating pressure to secure objectives. It's just important that there's answers to that pressure. So when the enemy team answers your pressure, you need to have an answer for their pressure. Like, okay, so Jax is split pushing, it's creating pressure. Like when pressure's been created, your team always has to be in position to answer that pressure. So your team has to be hovering Baron or another objective or another lane, which is another objective, like maybe bottom lane turret and Jax pushing top, that when they send more than one person or the strongest team member to come deal with the split push, you have an answer for it. Now the next thing, establish vision control. This is really important. Creating, like, vision is power, and then when the enemy team has no idea to having any kind of like power, like, it's just so hard for them to answer. Like when they have no vision, they face check, or it's really scary for them to deal with it, and they may not even come at all, may just give up the objective. It's important for you to realize what your enemy team is doing as well. So like as an example, having an idea of where they're at and what they're trying to do based on them not having vision control is how you should react. Like, should you sit there and bait a Baron? So like you act like you're doing Baron, the enemy team has to face check your team, you kill them, then you safely take Baron, or have they conceded Baron and then you're just wasting time by sitting in the brush? Should you take Baron? It's important for you to realize this based on how the enemy team acts, based on that. So, of course, establishing vision controls like sweepers, pinks, and wards, and so on. It's about denying vision and generating vision as well, which of course is very important. All right. So, as an example, play out of the control game. So, as I mentioned before, there's always plays based on your objective control. Like what kind of control you have over your objective kind of determines of how you should play. Also, it's also how you should answer objective control. If your enemy team, if your team has no control over an objective, the enemy team has a very strong objective control over it, you have to decide what you're going to do, which, of course, in a future slide we'll discuss more in detail. But, as I just mentioned, baiting out a fight, or just grouping up as a team and then trying to force, fight over objective control. Because sometimes you have to fight for even just getting control of the objective, let alone taking the objective. Alright, so going on here. Dealing with enemy objective control. So first things, communicate. Hey guys, we need to get vision control of Baron. Like it's dark. It was lit up, the map was lit up, but they walked in and cleared out their vision. What do we do? So, communicate. Just say, hey, come with me, help me ward Baron. Pressure, as another example, is sometimes having someone split push just so you can even get objective control is important. Or yourself as an entire team could pressure the map to force them out of taking Baron. You'll see this a lot in competitive play when the enemy team, like let's say one team, let's say TSM gets objective control of Baron, and then CLG answers by we can't safely face check that. We are not a team composition that can just death ball and face check their team. Let's all run down mid. And they start pushing mid, and then TSM's like, we can't kill Baron fast enough before they take our inhib. We have to leave and defend our lane. So that's a way of pressuring to make sure that safely the enemy team doesn't just keep control and have to deal with you, because CLG may choose to keep pushing and then take the fight there in the lane, or they could just say, okay, we got them off of the wards, now let's go over there and sweep out their vision and get vision control, and rinse and repeat. So now another option is safely scouting. This is huge in solo queue, so important in solo queue. So there's a couple ways of doing this to safely scout brushes to ensure you're not going to face check into an entire enemy team, or I don't know, a Fed Zed or something. So let's break this down. So the first thing, the most easiest way of doing it is blue trinkets. Using the blue trinket to scout far away with that ward to check brushes, so you don't have to safely, you don't have to unsafely face check. Next thing, skill shots. There's a lot of skill shots in the game. I think pretty much every skill shot in the game actually makes a noise when it lands. So you're playing Ezreal, Q the bush. Playing Sivir, Q the bush. Plenty of champions. Use an ability in the brush that will hopefully tell you if they're there. A lot of abilities don't even necessarily make a noise when it is casted. There's some other ways of checking. As an example, if you take Deathfire, the mastery, say you're playing Brand and you use W in the brush. So you'll see your Deathfire mastery tick and show an arrow towards where that's hitting, which will give you a tell saying, hey, there's someone in that brush. You hit someone with that ability. Next thing, ward hopping. So you could ward over walls to safely walk into a brush so you get vision and know that they're not there. And of course, sweepers and pinks is always important. It's also important to know that there's one, not an enemy in that brush, but also that there's not vision in that brush. Because as an example, the enemy may know you're coming and they may set up because of that. So it's really important for you to be sweeping while you're kind of like doing bush hopping to make sure the enemy team does not know you're there, because that could be very, very bad. All right. So now clear vision and establish control. Yep. So walk through these steps, clear the vision, and then you establish control of the objectives. Very important. All right. So now the golden question here. I'm going to take a quick drink before we continue. All right. Sorry, I was starting to lose my voice here. Okay. So when and when not to play around objectives. This is the golden question. Very important. So it's not every game should your team composition play around objectives. It kind of depends on a couple of factors. So first thing, and the most important factor, is what your team's win condition is. Is your team composition a split push comp? Is it a catch composition? Is it a siege composition? Is it a control composition? You know, the list goes on. So really identifying what your team does, and it's like, should we get it, like, you know, if we get vision control Baron and bait a fight, are we going to win against their team? That's like another really good example. Or it's like, if we have control or we know that the enemy team is doing Baron, can we poke them off of it? Or can we make a pick on them? Like, do we have a blitzcrank that can grab one out of the pit? Like, you know, what can we do around objectives? And then you should ward and control objectives accordingly. I mean, almost every composition should have some kind of vision control around objectives. It just depends on what kind of vision control. Is it important for you just to, most importantly, deny the vision in and around the pit so you guys can quickly take it? Or is it important for you guys to ward not only like in the pit, but outside of the pit and towards the enemy's jungle, so you know when they're coming, so you can make a pick when they come for vision control? Then you guys can take Baron as an example. So these are all factors that are very important for when you're actually trying to consider, you know, establishing objective control around Dragon or Baron or turrets. It's really important. Next thing, of course, current game status. Of course, this is really important and pretty common sense, but there's some depth to it that's important to discuss. So one, based on the game's time frame, is important to understand when you should be getting objective control, like 20 minutes Baron spawns. Like, should you have a ward the moment Baron spawns? Not necessarily, depending on the team composition. If the enemy team has a really strong objective control comp, and maybe they have like a really fed tank that can tank Baron, getting objective control like of Baron at 20 minutes could be really important to identify and recognize, or you could lose the game really fast that way. Of course, another thing is watching timers, watching when the next dragon is going to spawn, watching what dragon the next dragon is going to be, watching when Baron's going to be spawning next, and of course is all very important to really recognize based on the idea of you know, having like an idea of when you should be getting control. So the next thing is trading objectives. This is a pretty advanced term, but I would like to discuss it a bit without, you know, spending forever on it. But there's times where trading objectives is worth it, like trading a turret for a dragon, or trading an inhibitor for a Baron, or trading Elder for Baron. Like, there's a lot of crazy breakdowns for this, but it's generally understanding like what is more valuable to your team. Like, sometimes taking Elder Dragon is better than Baron because maybe your team can push. You don't need Baron minions to push, you just need more damage. And you have a lot of really strong Elder buffs that stacked up to make it worth it. And now the final thing to talk about, which is really important, and this is really important. Like, as an example, Desperate Plays. You know, Desperate Plays is taking an objective that is extremely risky, but your team has no choice. Like, let's say you're down a bunch of gold, your team's trying to forfeit, it's going to be over, but maybe, just maybe, you guys just rush Baron and try to take it. You get Baron, you guys could come back, so it's worth a shot, right? And this is something that a lot of this happens all the time in competitive play, is when the enemy team is like so far ahead of your team, or they're outcomping you, outplaying you, they have a huge gold advantage. Like, there's no real way of you coming back unless you guys get Baron. So you're like, let's do Baron. Like, you know, the game is practically lost already, so let's just quickly get a pink ward down, rush Baron. They find us, they ace us. Well, we thought we were losing anyways, so might as well give it a shot. So Desperate Plays is really important. And there's something like, just the other day I was coaching a student that had a game like this, and he's like, and his mid laner was like, let's just do Baron. He's like, well, we're just gonna get aced and lose. And I'm like, you guys are losing right now anyways. You guys are down so much gold. Like, you guys aren't really coming back. The enemy team outscales you. Like, taking this Baron may be the best call possible. They did it. They got the Baron and came back. And it's like, that's exactly, it happens all the time in my games and students' games and games in general, competitive games, that Desperate Plays are totally fine without even having objective control. So that's why I really wanted to bring it up and mention that, because a lot of players try to play too calculated to win. They shouldn't be at that point when they should be desperate to make plays. And yeah, just to reiterate, guys, I will be answering any of your questions Once there'll be a slide that'll say ask questions now. I just want to get over the content first and then have the questions towards it, because your questions may be answered based on what we go over in the future. I don't want to like spend too much time going over things that'll be answered anyways. All right, next thing here, circumstantial power plays. This is really important. So certain objectives may be more power than usual based on certain things. So as an example, blue buff control versus siege mages. So against like Xerath and Ziggs and so on, denying the enemy blue buff could be really important to actually stop them from getting that kind of control of siege. So a huge like difference in like power nowadays is that mages have way less problem with mana until they're level 18, because mages have a lot of ways of getting mana, like such as Lost Chapter from Morellonomicon, which most mages in general take, which gives them mana when they level up. But when they don't level up anymore, they don't really gain like a chunk of mana anymore. So late game blue buff is really important to mages, and sometimes using that as objective, gaining objective control, tons of vision around the enemy blue buff, denying it could be a win condition for your team, so they can't push. So that's as an example. So as another thing, like Scuttle Crab could be a really big objective to take based on compositions. Like if your enemy jungler is like Lee Sin or Elise or something like that, like having your jungler, or if you're a jungler or even a top laner sometimes, take that Scuttle Crab early game, it could really relieve pressure from your team from the enemy jungler. Or late game, of course, getting Scuttle Crab is like a foolproof way of getting vision. It can't be denied. Like when that vision's down during Scuttle Crab's iteration, the enemy team cannot possibly Baron without you getting vision, unless they have champions that can hop the wall and sneak it. Because if you hop the wall over Baron, Scuttle Crab can't technically see inside the pit, so it's not foolproof. So if the enemy team has like a Lee Sin and a Caitlyn, Lee Sin could ward hop over the wall, Caitlyn can attack over the wall, they can sneak Baron, or a Jax, and the list goes on of examples, but champions that can jump over the wall, that can be sneaked, so that is not a foolproof way, but generally, for the most part, it's a way of having a guaranteed way of having objective control, unless you're against those very specific champions. Now, next thing, mentioned this a little bit before, but Elder Dragons over Baron. That's really important to discuss. I discussed it a little bit earlier, but as an example, baiting the enemy team to do Baron so you guys get Elder Dragon is a real strategy, or vice versa. Maybe you feel like your team composition, despite the enemy team having some dragons, maybe they just have some Wind Dragon or something. It doesn't matter too much for late game pushing, so maybe you just let them get Elder and then you just rush down Baron, and vice versa, depending on how your strategies are combining. It's a good way of like considering to control objectives and making these kind of power plays. It's really a big deal. Also, to note, a big part of this seminar is going to be answering questions. I know that there's going to be a lot of like very specific questions based on things, so guys, please be prepared to ask questions, and I'm looking forward to them. I'm just, once again, want to go over this content before going into questions, which we're practically at questions now. So yeah, so moving forward. Publications with communications. Okay, so this is really important to discuss as well. This is where I expect a lot of questions to possibly be asked, like what if my teammates don't listen, and so on. This is like a big question I get with students, or when I discuss this idea with other players, such as communicating. So I'm going to give some tips on getting, like, just in general communicating with your team. So the first thing is, it's psychologically proven that people are willing to listen to someone that has been a leader from the beginning than someone that tries to be a leader when things go wrong. So as an example, if you try to have your voice heard from the start of the game, it helps a lot. So like at the start of in the champion select, talk to your team, talk about win conditions, talk about this. Be the guy that's always talking from the get-go. That way it's like right when things start going wrong and you're like, oh, my team needs like a leader, I'm going to be the leader. People are way less likely to listen to you given that situation. But if you're leading from the beginning, they may be more likely to listen to you. Next thing, once again, this is a proven fact, being ahead helps. People are more likely to listen to someone that is successful. So if you're winning lane, or you're the one that's, maybe you're a jungler getting your team snowballed and so on, it's more likely for your team to listen to you. So of course this isn't like the best tip in the world, because it's like you have to be ahead for this to work, but it's true. It really is true. And I'm like, a lot of my students have used this against me when I've told people, like when I communicate to people, they listen, which is kind of true. Like as an example, if I'm smurfing, I'm typically doing well, so my teammates are more likely to listen to me when I call shots. So yeah, that's a big one too. Another thing, explained reasoning with communication. Another psychologically proven thing is that people are way less likely to listen to you if you're just telling them what to do and not why. Ironically, this is really important with children and understanding children's psychology. and it may be arguable that a lot of the people you're playing with are children, which is possibly likely, or mentally through children. Giving them a reason behind your the reason what you're telling them to do is really important. So like saying like do Baron because they don't have vision, or do Baron because this person's down, or split push because they can't deal with this champion, or hey guys, group up because they have Rengar, they're going to be making picks. Like give a because with your explanation. So it's really important. Next thing, when all else fails, measure the risk and make a decision. So there are times where I'm smurfing, my teammates like are hesitating or not listening to me. I just do it. Like Baron, if it's a good call and my team's not coming, I'm playing AD carry, I start hitting it. Like I'm like, if you guys don't come, this Baron's gonna kill me. As an example. So it's like just sometimes it's forcing your teammates to make the decision isn't always bad. It's just measuring the risk. It's like when the only time I really do that, it's like if I start hitting Baron and my team doesn't come, like what's going to happen? If I have to back because Baron damaged me too much, is the enemy team going to be able to take an objective because of this? Like yes or no? Like really measure out like forcing your teammates into that kind of situation where they have to make a decision is good, but it's circumstantial. Don't get too crazy with it because it could really throw a game. But really measure the risk and then go from there. And if the final thing is calling shots, you won't always be right. People are wrong occasionally and whatnot. So don't get discouraged if you make a call, your team listens, and you lose, and your time team blames you. They should blame you because you did make a call and you lost. But learn from it. That's the most important thing. That's the final thing about shot calling there. All right. So now the questions may flood in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back on questions that were asked a while ago, and then just go down the list of questions they're asking. So any questions you guys have for on-topic questions based on the seminar, ask now. And then after these questions, I'll have another section where you can ask any kind of off-topic question in relations to me as a coach or a player or whatever you want. You can ask then. All right. Next thing. Okay, right. How to apply this concept to a bronze team which doesn't know the impact of these things. Okay. So one thing is kind of explaining why is important. Definitely really big. Because they may not fully understand like why that's the right call. But if you kind of explain why, maybe they listen. And bronze is kind of hard to shot call at times, so you definitely have a good point. But typically, explaining why and hopefully they're listening. If not, then sometimes like you're going to lose some like possibly free objectives. Here we go. How can you go about getting vision control while pressuring lanes? For an example, red side blue buff. Red side blue buff while shoving in bot lane and mid lanes. How far can laners push while establishing vision? That's a good question, and that really depends on the circumstance of the game. Is there going to be a danger of you pushing up that far? Are you strong enough to 1v1 or 1v2 the champions that are going to be on that side of the map? Like, is it that safe for you to get roam and get wards? Are you a mobile champion that can get out if you get caught? Like, there's a lot of reasons behind that, and it kind of depends if you're alone or not. That's something that you left out. Like, if you're soloing, of course, all the things I explained matter. But if you're as a team, typically grouping up as a team, if you're the stronger team, it's totally fine for you to lead through and get vision. Just make sure if you're like a squishy champion, not the face tech, and make sure your tank's in the front. Next one. Okay, someone said, I'm just going to follow up this question because he followed up. For an example, Fed Jace top with Memphis mid, even bot lane. So I'm guessing you're the Fed Jace? I mean, if you can 1v2 or 1v1, you shouldn't worry about it too much. You can also use your Q to to check bushes, so maybe you don't run into 3 people. It's a pretty good way of getting vision control. Because when you're split pushing, getting vision control is, of course, really important. Next one, how to proper do a split push, or how do I split push against Singed? Because you asked 2 questions there. So how to properly do a split push really depends on the champion. First thing you should be asking yourself is, should I be split pushing? Which of course, like there's, like I can go down the list. It'll take a while to explain what how important it is to split push on certain champions and how important it is not to split push on certain champions. And the list goes on. But assuming that you know that your champion should be split pushing, getting vision control and having a strong understanding of your power is very important, and having good awareness of the map. So split pushing against Singed is totally different. So split pushing against Singed is very difficult, and it's a really good question because Singed is a champion that not necessarily has a ton of power, but has a lot of utility to split push. He's very hard to catch, and he also forces people to waste a lot of time trying to catch him. So understanding when it's important to show a Singed attention and when it's not important is the most important thing to recognize against a Singed. So how to split push against Singed? You should only clear the wave when it gets close to the turret and have teleport available. That's how you split push against Singed. So you don't want to like try to deal with Singed until it's actually a threat, because like Singed isn't like an insanely fast pusher compared to a lot of other champions that split push, but he does push, and then he is really fast and hard to catch. So the problem is with Singed is that players don't recognize when they need to deal with him. And the only time to really match a Singed split push is if he's getting close to the turret. You go up there, clear the whip minions, because he's not a fast turret taker either. He doesn't have a ton of attack speed or a ton of attack damage. So it's not like he can push turrets quickly. It's just the fact he can push waves and he's difficult to catch. So just deal with the waves and then leave him alone. Deal with the waves, leave him alone. That's how you deal with Singed. Here we go. If my team forces team fights and wins, but they have only like 2 team members left that are guarding the turret, and we are too weak to dive them, what should we do objective-wise to have an edge on them? That's a really good question. I really like that. So, and this is something that happens a lot. Sometimes establishing vision control is all you can do. And also it's like you need to like, assuming that you have a really strong understanding of like how weak your team is, and you know, like just 100% factual that your team is too weak to do those objectives, just gain vision control. But what I'm going to say is that just because your team is low doesn't mean you can't do Baron. I've seen like all the time you could like tank swap Baron and take it and so on with 5 people if there's only 2 people on the enemy team and they're just, you know, just farming and playing it safe. But if all you can do is really get vision control is a huge edge. So give vision control of Baron back, then rush Baron, and then bait it as an example of what you can do to have an edge. How to end a game with an advantage so you don't throw. Good question. Objective control. So, when you're ahead, you know, objective control is all about the game. You need to get objectives to end the game, and sometimes your composition cannot push without Baron. So, like getting vision control of Baron and then doing Baron when you're ahead is the way of closing out a game. Can I make a guide to split pushing, like with examples of split pushers? Maybe. I may make a video on that or something, or do a seminar on it. Yeah, for sure. I'll note it down. Do you think it is that? Do you think that is right call to not do Baron if the enemy jungler is up? That's a good question. If it's a 50-50 and you have no way of dealing with the jungler, then typically it's not a good idea. But sometimes it's a risk that you have to take. Like if you get a really lucky ace and Baron is up and like your team is like seriously, it was like you guys are behind a lot of gold, but you made a lucky pick. Sometimes making that risk is worth it. But playing around an enemy jungler that has smite is really important, like how mobile they are. So if they're a champion that can get over walls and easily steal, like Lee Sin or something, it's all about pressuring Lee Sin off, sending someone off the Baron and dealing with him so he can't like sneak into the thing. But if it's like a champion that can't easily get into the pit, just zone him off. Just don't let him in. So it's a good question. How can I practice an effective way to learn these concepts? Good question. So what I suggest doing is keep it like on your mind, so you're always mentally keeping in depth with it. So like be like considering objective control, like say for this game or say for like one game when you're ahead, be like I'm really going to pay attention to objective control and how important it is. Just review the concepts, be like okay, vision control, sweepers, this and that. Like just try it, like, you know, try to apply the concepts really just in ranked games. Just takes time. Just wondering what ranks you guys are. If you're asking me currently, I'm Diamond 1 in North America. How to think ahead and prep waves for objectives like Dragon? Well, that's a good question. It sounds like you're already doing it. If you see Dragon spawning, create a slow push. Like just kill the ranged minions, or even just leave just kill a couple of the minions in the wave that's like bottom lane or something. Create a slow push to deal with it. Prepping waves is all about creating slow pushes so the enemy team has to react to it. So yeah, in terms of waves, it depends on the point in the game. Of course, early game you don't want to create a slow push because it's going to hit the turret really fast. You just want to push at that point. So in general, I would say just creating slow push late game. Early game, just push the waves. Make sure the waves are pushed in. So the enemy team has to make a choice of getting farm or going for the objective defend. In your opinion, is Elder Dragon or Baron better for pushing lanes and trying to end the game? Baron. I mean, hands down Baron. Elder Dragon is good for the fact of like doing more damage, and that's pretty much it. Like surviving team fights longer, more damage. Baron is the push buff. That's how it is. That is period. Baron like mainly gives you you know, control of waves and pushing. Their minions get significantly harder to kill, so it's better for pushing. How to deal with the poke composition? That's a really hard question to answer because it really depends on your comp too. But typically, is avoid getting pinned under turrets, because getting pinned under turrets is where poke comps thrive. So just try to force fights before the enemy team either pokes you down or gets you under turret. Do I have a guide on wave control? I do not. I don't have many guides out. I've been doing seminars. I've just started my YouTube channel, but guides will come. But in terms of right now, I don't have many. But if you do have any kind of suggestions, feel free to say them now. PM me on Twitch, PM me on YouTube, PM me on Twitter, whatever it takes. Just drop me a message somewhere where it's permanent. That way I can refer back to it, because I'm always looking for content ideas, what people want. So by all means. 2 towers are Baron. That's circumstantial. Typically, I would almost always say Baron, because typically the Baron you can get like more than 1 or 2 turrets. You typically get 3 or more, depending on like the game stance. But almost always Baron. I would say almost always. There was another question. I constantly struggle with split pushing. I play Ryze and Echo mostly. I want to split push, especially since I carry TP, but when my team is constantly losing fights, I always try to rush down to help, but lose the pressure in lanes. What would you say is a good indicator of when to rejoin the team? That's a really good question. So, I would say the 2 champions that you listed, while they are decent pushers, they're not the best split pushers in the sense that they can't like really push down like objectives early game, and they're also not the most, like, I'll say Echo is not that great at like really dealing and like killing people quickly. Ryze is pretty good at doing that, especially with the current Ryze. But it's not like a Jax or champion that can really just smack down turrets and push really fast. So like split pushing, especially in lower elo with those champions, are way more risky. So I would say generally after laning phase on those types of champions, you should be grouping with your team less about pushing. Like very late game, you can try split pushing, but it's just very risky. So I would say in general you shouldn't, especially if the enemy team is really good at catching, like they have really strong engage that's really quick, that the fight will be over when they engage. I would not suggest split pushing at all. What's the best way to play Renekton late game? I mean, should I split push as Renekton? Should I Okay, that's a good question. I like Renekton, so I can answer that. It depends on how fed you are as Renekton. Typically, split pushing when you're ahead as Renekton is good. But Renekton's also a pretty strong team fighter and really strong over objective control. So it really just comes down to exactly the way I answered it before, is like dealing with understanding like how fast will your team die if you're split pushing compared to like how long it takes you to teleport the channel. Do you think watching all your seminars will get me a silver too? Maybe. I mean, my seminars aren't always directly about like instant like climbing tips. It's more about like general game stuff that like the more you begin to master it, the stronger it's going to impact your play. But also I have some like videos on my YouTube channel of me playing in silver on multiple roles, so you can check those out and see like maybe watching how I play out the game may help you break down some of like the things. Maybe it'll help you click on somewhere. Best time to roam is support when your AD carry will not die or lose tons of farm. Is the general rule. How high do you rate dragons? Is it more worth it to take a turret over a Drake? Depends on the Drake, but typically I would say that turrets are more important, especially First Blood turret. That's a huge change. That is somewhat recent. First Blood turret is like one of the most important objectives right now in the game. But from there, it's like weighing out what dragon it is. An Infernal is almost always better than a turret. But really weighing out like what dragon is and how important it is important. As a top lane Wukong main, if I'm fed in the game, should I build items to do damage or build items to survive? Every Wukong player I've ever met says that if you're building tank, you're doing it wrong. You always build raw damage on Wukong. That's what every Wukong one-trick player has told me. And I believe that as well. I play Wukong jungle a bit. I don't play Wukong top, I play Wukong jungle and I build full damage as well. Pretty much people will say you're doing it wrong. Like, sometimes they'll build Guardian Angel, but they almost always go full damage. But of course that requires more skill, but it also forces you to learn the champion faster. So it's more unforgiving, so it does teach you a bit better. Do you have any advice on split pushing as Zed? Yeah, you should be split pushing as Zed only if your team composition can deal with it. Like, they can actually correctly play around split pushing. Other than that, Zed's better at catching people out that are alone more so than split pushing himself. How to deal with a hard CC team comp? Not get hit by CC. Like, sometimes you honestly, like, lose games just because the enemy team has so much crowd control and you can't deal with it. If you can't dodge it, you're going to lose, pretty much. Like, you're going to have items and whatnot to deal with it, but there's only so much. So it really depends on how ahead your team is or how behind your team is at dual CC. But if you're behind and the enemy team has a very strong crowd control death bomb composition, you can almost forget about it. You're probably going to lose. Man one champion have a variety. I did have a seminar on it, so I definitely definitely suggest you check that out. But generally, I suggest maining one champion and then have two backups. That's typically what I suggest. But if you want more in detail on that, definitely, definitely check out that seminar because I go really in detail on that seminar about it. Generally, should I build hybrid or tank and damage on Renekton, split pusher, or should I do full damage? I'm a strong believer in full damage on Renekton. I love full damage Renekton. But sometimes I build like tanky depending on the matchup. If they're extremely, if you're in a losing matchup, I typically go tanky because Renekton doesn't really have like that many losing matchups. Renekton usually has losing matchups if he doesn't build tanky. But if he builds tanky, it's hard for him to lose lane, which is why you can definitely vary based on that. All right, so now we're getting off-topic questions, so feel free to ask any questions off-topic. Starting now. So as an example, someone asked my mod what my coaching sessions cost. My coaching is $25 an hour with the opportunity of reducing the price based on bundle purchases. You can check out my coaching profile on Law Coaching to see on that. Or even check out my YouTube channel. It has some stuff about my coaching there as well. What is my full damage build? I'm assuming you're asking that on Renekton, or is that Wukong? I'll tell both, I guess. Renekton, I stray away from Hydra nowadays. I typically go Ghostblade into Black Cleaver. Yeah, and I build the same thing on Wukong. Ghostblade and Black Cleaver, full damage from there. And then from there, it's like sometimes I go tanky, sometimes I build damage. On top of Wukong, I would still go damage after that. It just kind of depends on the game. Like Maul, if I need to get some magic resist while doing damage. Same thing as Renekton, Maul if I need to do magic resist. But typically it's Ghostblade and the Black Cleaver if I'm ahead. No, you are allowed to ask as many league questions as you want. Off topic now is less about objective control and more about anything else. Do I coach all regions? Yes, I do. I coach all regions. Doesn't matter where you're from, what time you want to get coached. How is Titanic Black Cleaver? It's okay. I'll get Titanic Hydra if I need to get a little bit tankier. I really like Ghostblade because it helps me chase and really like deal with it. Like with with Ghostblade and Cleaver, I make so many like 2v1s happen where like the enemy jungler ganks me, and I kill them both just because of how much damage it does and how mobile it makes you to like juke in out of bushes and so on. A lot of outplay potential. But getting early Hydra isn't terrible. It's okay. Helps you push, and also upgrading into Titanic isn't bad. It has like a lot of burst potential, so it's not bad. It's okay, I guess. I'll say how I feel about it personally. How can I learn jungle? I watch pro players, but it seems kind of random. Yeah, watching pro players isn't the best because you don't learn much from them, especially if you're just the average watcher. Typically, what I suggest doing if you want to learn jungle is watch high elo junglers, but don't listen. Like I would even mute their stream. Just watch what they do around the map. Watch their jungle clear path. Watch where they go to gank first, and ask yourself, why are they doing that? Why did it work? Why didn't it work? Ask yourself those questions, and it'll help you learn that. Of course, I can coach you. Even Night Blue 3 is not the best. I mean, he doesn't really do educational stuff anymore. Learn harder champions, master them, or play easier champions. Play champions that you find fun, no matter what they are. Because if you play a champion that you have fun with, you're going to be more motivated to learn the game and the champion. But playing easy champions just to climb is a bad idea, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's pretty much the way I go with that. How often do I coach? Coaching is my full-time job, so, I mean, I coach typically up to like 50 hours a week, sometimes more depending on how I'm feeling. Just depends on how much business I have. So, by all means, if you're interested, I'll have time for you. I feel like a really bronze habit I have is not activating one of my items, Youmuu's or Ravenous Hydra. Any way of remembering to use them? Well, in terms of binding the keys, I'll answer that question first. Whatever's most comfortable for you. I'm used to like using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you can have mouse keys if it makes it easier for you. Like a lot of mouses have programmable buttons that can work with the League, stuff like that. In terms of getting the habit of activating them, if you die and you didn't use an active, Like really just kick yourself in the ass about it. Be like, oh my god, I'm so bad. If I pop that, maybe. Like really try to convince yourself how much of an issue it is you not doing it. Because a lot of players just are really good at just like pushing it off, thinking, oh, I didn't pop it, but I don't know if it would have made a difference or not anyways. But really just like really analyze it because it really does make the difference. So I definitely suggest like that's how I kind of get over bad habits of mine. Next thing, next question. Let's say I'm really suffering in lane, almost feeding or feeding. I can't leave my tower without dying, and being at my tower is dangerous. I don't want to lose CS gold. I've seen some people watch. I watch going to the jungle and take creeps, but I've always decided not to go as it takes away my jungle farms. Which situation is okay to take jungle minions? The only situation you should be taking jungle minions from a jungler is if it is actually unsafe for you to stay under turret. Think about watching streams. It kind of depends on what elo range you're in, because in high elo, people are way better at like diving, and low elo no one's gonna dive you 2v1 really, and they may do it bad, so they may pick up a double kill. But the only time you should really leave it is like if you cannot sit under turret before you die, and you can actually safely take a camp or two. But even then it's bad. Like when you see streamers go and take their jungler, they're tilting and they're being brats. The best way to put it, really, that's the honest truth. So yeah, I mean the best tip I have for you is not get in a situation where you're that far behind. In the event you are that far behind, just back and then sacrifice. Try to let your turret die so you can catch up. Trying to let your turret die is one of the best suggestions I can give you. Best ways to improve. I'm currently D4 and spam games all day, 10 to 15 a day. What is the best way to improve? Being productive in your games is the most way. Like it doesn't matter how many games you play a day if you're not like learning from them. So try to force yourself into a learning mentality. Always try to take away from each game, understand why you're not climbing, and go from there. That's the best way. Identify your issues and figure out, like, ask yourself why they're happening, how can I fix them, and go from there. All right. So I'll give a couple more minutes here to ask questions, and then I'll close this out. And then, of course, there's no more questions, and I'll close it out as well. What are some good conditions to team fight? If you're ahead, like if your team composition is ahead, or if your team composition is about team fighting and the enemy team is not. I mean, there's a couple like stuff like that. Yeah. Thoughts on Nunu? I think Nunu's in a decent spot right now. He just got nerfed a little bit. I definitely like his win rate was high, so that's without a doubt he was a strong jungler. But he was nowhere near as strong as Nidalee or Elise. So like people like talk about how strong Nunu was, but I don't like. I think that Nunu was easy to play, and that's why his win rate was high, because there's some stats around him that made it matter. But by all means, I did not think he was like game-breakingly broken. Like when people were banning Nunu and Nidalee was left open, and people had picked Nidalee, I was a little salty. Let me put it that way. That's kind of the way I look at it on Nunu. Next question is: you offer coaching in form of game analysis. I'm Brazilian, so I don't know how to talk English very well. Well, I mean, generally I understand what you're saying. I've worked with students from all over the world, South America, whether that's Brazil, or like anywhere. It doesn't matter. Korean students, I have Chinese students, I have Australian, I have Japanese students. I don't speak English well. I can work with you as long as you can work with me. I will work with you. Is Nidalee good after the nerfs? I still think she's a decent champion, but she's not nearly as broken as she was before. Those Nidalee nerfs were so needed. I hate Nidalee. I'm a Nidalee hater, so yeah. My law coaching profile is right here. Just linked it in chat. Are you familiar with Echo builds? Yes, I love Echo. He's one of my most played champions. A lot of time I want to go Sunfire Abyssal first, but I always want Triforce. But also want Triforce. Should I finish my Abyssal Sunfire, or should I go Triforce first? When I go MR first, I tend to not have so much impact. And so I'm assuming you're playing top lane Echo. If you're going for, if you're going Triforce build, make sure you're going with Fervent Battle Mastery, because if you're not, you're doing it completely wrong, first thing. But it kind of depends on the matchup. You can't build the same way every game. I don't really like Sunfire Abyssal either on Echo, because if Echo's full tank, he's not very effective. You can't really do much. So I feel like Trinity Force first is always important. It's just important to realize what matchups you win and what matchups you lose while going that build on Echo, which is a Trinity Force build, and playing around it correctly. Is Shen meta? No, but I think he's good. Like I don't think he's like meta game. Like he's like important pick and ban worthy, pick worthy every game. But I think he's still decent. Can you explain the new runes? Are you talking about Keystone Masteries? I'm not sure what you're trying to ask. Do you know why Tryndamere is popular around Plat Elo at the moment? No idea. um, I have no idea why he's randomly seeing popularity, if he is. With Echo Top, whatever his power spikes, level 3 is really strong. His level 2 can be really strong depending on matchups. Level 6 is really strong, of course. Just playing around your ult. You have to play around your ult correctly if you consider it a power spike, though. And then, of course, completing Trinity is a power spike. If they're adding new runes, I'm actually unsure, because I haven't really looked into new runes that they're adding into the next patch. Interesting. How to carry a support? Just understand your win condition as a support and play towards it. Support will have the lower win rate of any other role, period. If you were to put the best support player in the world and the best like top laner, mid laner, AD carry, jungler, those other players will have a higher win rate, but you can carry a support. You will have a higher, if you are better in the Elo range as the average support, you will climb as support. It'll just take longer. You'll have a lower win rate, but it's possible. It's just understand your role and be playing towards it as your support this game. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up here in terms of any kind of questions. So thanks you guys for watching. This will be uploaded on YouTube if you want to rewatch it. Also, look forward to my next seminar. I'll be posting it tonight on LoL Coaching, so you can just sign up for it. Also, if you have any questions about my coaching, just go to my coaching profile and add my Skype, and I can discuss it with you. Next thing is if you're interested in joining my Discord server, after the stream ends, I'm going to link my Discord name, and you can add me on Discord. This Discord is for people that are looking for a productive community to discuss things with, and just grow as a player together, finding duo partners around your Elo range and so on. Of course, just I'll drop my Discord name in it, and if you want to join the server, I'll get you in. If you enjoyed the seminar, make sure you follow my stream and my Twitter and my YouTube for any kind of announcements and content. And the final thing is, if you're interested in free coaching, once again, go to the seminar link, and of course my next seminar link tonight will also have that form where you can fill it out to get free coaching that will be drawn at the end of the month. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you guys later.